Once upon a time, there was a king. He worked hard for his people. The king had a childhood friend named John. John was a goldsmith. He owned a big shop. Many workers worked for him. He was good to them. But he had a strange habit. When he got angry, he always said,
"You will do it. Or I will."
This annoyed people. The king knew about it and found it funny. But for John, it caused trouble. John got married a few days ago. His wife's name was Kate. She was kind and smart. She did not know about his habit yet. One morning, Kate was in the kitchen. She remembered John once saying,
"I don't want to eat the maid's maid."
She brewed tea, toasted bread, and made scrambled and boiled eggs. With the maid's help, she set the table. John walked in and sat down. Kate joined him with a smile. He took a sip of tea, it was too sweet. He picked up a piece of toast and ate silently. Then, he ate the scrambled eggs. They had too much black pepper. He picked up a boiled egg, but it was not fully cooked. Kate noticed he was quiet.
Did you like the breakfast?
John looked at her, then smiled. Kate smiled.
"Yes, my dear."
Kate smiled. After breakfast, John got up and left for his shop. But his stomach was still empty. At the shop, John called a servant.
"Please bring tea with sandwiches."
The servant nodded and left. After some time, he returned with the tea and sandwiches from a nearby shop. John sat down to eat. Just then, his servant Archie came and smiled.
You never like eating outside. What happened today?
John took a sip of tea and smiled.
Kate wasn't home today. So I didn't feel like eating at home.
He couldn't say the real reason, that her cooking wasn't good. One night at dinner, John gathered courage to speak. He didn't want to hurt Kate. He said politely,
"Did you never learn cooking?"
Kate shook her head.
No. I never cooked before.
She noticed his expression.
Didn't you like it?
John forced a smile.
"I think you should learn."
Kate shrugged.
Okay.
But she didn't try to improve. John became more frustrated each day. One morning, John sat for breakfast. The eggs were not cooked well. And the tea was not sweet enough. The toast was half burnt. And the scrambled eggs were too salty. He couldn't eat any of it. He shouted,
"You will cook well. Or I will."
Then, he left for his shop. Kate stood frozen. The maid stared in shock. Tears rolled down her cheeks. After a while, she gathered herself, stood up, and left for her father's house. When she reached there, her parents, Joseph and Laura, were shocked to see her crying. Laura hugged her. A maid ran to bring water. Laura gave Kate a sip and asked,
What happened?
Kate sobbed.
John said I will cook well, or he will divorce me.
Joseph paced the room in anger.
You don't need to go back there anymore.
Meanwhile, at the shop, John felt uneasy.
I shouldn't have spoken like that. She must be hurt.
That night, he returned home. Kate was nowhere to be seen. The maids served dinner. He sat down and asked,
Where is Kate?
The maids exchanged glances. One finally spoke.
She is gone.
John's heart sank.
Oh no.
He went to his father's house. Joseph glared at him.
Kate will not return.
John asked.
But why?
Kate sat with Laura, her face tear-streaked. Laura said,
You told her to cook well, or you would divorce her.
John's eyes widened.
No. Kate. I didn't mean that.
Kate snapped.
Then what did you mean?
John sighed.
I meant I would eat the maid's cooking instead.
Everyone fell silent. Then, Joseph burst into laughter, and Laura smiled. She nudged Joseph, and they stepped outside. John held Kate's hands.
I love you. I can't live without you.
Kate wiped her tears and smiled. They returned home together. A few days later, John visited the palace and told the king everything. The king laughed.
You did the same to me in childhood.
John smiled.
That's just my style.
Years passed. Mike was born, then Julie. Time flew by, and soon they grew up. Now, it was their marriage age. One night, John came home from the shop. At dinner, Julie said,
Dad, I need $1,000.
Why? Dear?
John asked.
I want to go shopping.
But you went last week.
I need more.
Julie said.
Okay. Take it from the cupboard.
John turned to Mike.
You are joining the shop tomorrow. Get up on time.
Mike frowned.
Dad, it's my time to eat and play.
John smiled.
At your age, I was your father. If you don't work, no one will give you a girl.
Mike laughed.
But you are the king's friend. You will get it easily.
John laughed.
Not for you, for me.
Kate glared. John panicked.
Oh dear. You know how much I love you. Just joking.
They ate and talked. The next morning, John asked.
Where's Mike?
Julie said slowly.
Dad. He is sleeping.
Kate stayed silent. John left for the shop angrily. There, he shouted at workers on small things. That night at dinner, John asked.
Mike. Why didn't you wake up?
Mike shrugged.
Dad. I don't want to go.
John shouted.
You will go tomorrow. Or I will.
Then he left. Mike was shocked. He packed his bag. Julie and Kate tried to stop him. But he didn't listen and left. He reached his grandfather's house. Joseph and Laura tried to explain. But he ignored them. The next morning, John asked.
Where's Mike?
Kate sighed.
He went to my father's house.
John was shocked. He rushed there.
Son. Why did you leave the home?
Mike exclaimed.
You said you would throw me out.
John shook his head.
Oh no. I meant you will go tomorrow. Or I will take you by force.
Mike was stunned.
I'm sorry, Dad. I misunderstood.
John smiled.
It's okay, son. Let's go home.
One morning, John wore his black royal coat and left for the shop. On the way, he saw two men quarreling. He stopped and listened. The sun was hot, so he removed his coat and placed it on a bench. When the argument ended, he turned. His coat was stolen.
Who stole my royal coat? Return it, or I will.
He kept saying the same thing wherever he went. One day, thief's friend whispered.
John is the king's friend. He says the thief must return it. Or he will.
The thief panicked.
Or you will what?
He will behead the thief.
Fear gripped the thief.
I can't wear it. I can't sell it. People will recognize it. And I will be beheaded.
That night, he grabbed the coat and ran to John's house. He tossed it inside the boundary wall and ran away. The next morning, the maid found it and handed it to John.
My coat is back.
Later, he visited the palace and shared the story. The king laughed.
Even thieves fear your threats now. But if you didn't get it back, you will.
John smiled.
Or I will get a new one from you.
The king burst into laughter.